Welcome. Brian, do we have any changes to the agenda this evening?
President Finn, we do. Can you hear me okay? The data seems to be really choppy right now. Okay. I do have one change to the agenda. Staff would like to add an emergency procurement ratification. Let me restate that. Consideration by the board for ratification of an emergency procurement for the Donner Creek well motor replacement. If it pleases the board, we can add this to the end of the action items so we have some timely management through some of the presentations we have. We have guests this evening, but I do have an additional item to add to the action.
Do we need to make a motion to add that, Council Gross?
Yes, so you need to make two findings. One, that this item came to the attention of the board after the agenda was posted. And second, that there's a need to take immediate action, that is action prior to the next regularly scheduled board meeting. And you would add the agenda item by a motion approved by at least 3/5 of the board.
Thank you. So it is my understanding that this came to our attention on Saturday, which would have been after the agenda posted. And that we need to replace the pump. Brian?
Correct. President Finn, the well failed on Saturday. Staff became aware of it over the weekend, and it is a critical water supply, in particular in the summer, in order to manage, in large part, our water distribution in the Tahoe Donner subdivision. So it is general manager's opinion and assessment, an emergency repair, and we did become aware of it following the publication of the agenda.
So I believe that our criteria have been met. Would anybody like to make a motion that we add this agenda or add this action item to the agenda?
I'll move.
Thank you, Joe. I'll second. Shauna, can we get a vote, please?
And we should take public comment on this motion as well.
I apologize. Is there any public comments on this addition to the agenda?
Madam President.
Thank you. And now I do believe we had a motion and a second. If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Liliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is that the only change that we have?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Which brings us to our public comment section of the evening. And I understand that we have lots of public comments tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Shauna to read them for us.
Thank you. And I apologize to any member of the public should I pronounce your name incorrectly. Stephen Bauman stated, to help our community through the PSOM power outage event this summer, please implement a microgrid for Truckee as soon as humanly possible. These power outages are a harbinger of our future with climate change and wildfires becoming the new normal. Truckee needs one now. Krista Haskell, as a full-time resident of Truckee, I'm very concerned about the upcoming power outages. To help our community through the PSOM events this summer, can we please implement a microgrid for Truckee ASAP? These power outages are an issue for our future, and with climate change, wildfires becoming the new norm. Truckee needs action now. Let's get on the right side of the change. Ned Roberts, to help our community through potential PSOM power outage events this summer, please implement a microgrid.
Donna, you have disappeared.
I disappeared, I'm back.
Oh, thank you.
Tom, please consider implementing a community microgrid for Truckee, something to provide essential services with power and help our community through PSOM power outage events that might be upcoming. President Finn, I do 25 of these in support of a microgrid. Would you like me to continue reading the whole of them? You're muted.
I'm muted. Of course I am. That's a tough question. I think that 25, I think let's just keep reading. If they're that brief, and I think people deserve their names to be read out and where they stand on the issue.
Pam and Tony Kozlowski, please help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer by implementing a microgrid for Truckee. It's outrageous that NV Energy can potentially impact so many homes without being held accountable. Thank you for your consideration. Jim Savrisky, I would encourage the board to discuss energy independence given the risk of PSOM power outages event this summer and beyond as climate change and wildfires seem to be moving us into a new normal where energy reliable. Anna Levigi, to help our community through the PSOM power outage events, please implement a microgrid for Truckee now. Susie Lippiner, to help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer, please implement a microgrid for Truckee immediately. This will be essential for community members, especially the frail, elderly, and disabled, and for general public safety. It's my understanding that the hospital already has a generator, so it would be the other businesses that need to be supported. Celia Du Bois, I'm concerned about PSOM power outage events this summer, and I'm writing to ask the town of Truckee to please implement a microgrid ASAP. Corky Leslie, please help our community through PSOM power outage events this summer. Please implement a microgrid for Truckee. We need basic electricity for safety purposes. Don Leslie, please include me as pro microgrid for the downtown to the Shell station. Eric Smith, to help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer, please implement a microgrid for Truckee now. Ina Bauman, please consider and hopefully approve helping in the coming and probably all future years power outages for wildfire protection. Our downtown grid is the only sensible and safe answer to what's happening now. Thank you for your work on the behalf of the TDPUD. Matt Holt, to help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer, please implement a microgrid for Truckee now. Ari Holt, to help our community through the PSOM power outage this summer, please implement a microgrid for Truckee now. Thank you. Erica Samofsky, to help community through the PSOM power outage events this summer, please implement a microgrid for Truckee now. Grocery stores need to food, gas stations, and need to be powered. Now that businesses are not accepting cash, credit card systems need to remain powered, and a few other important retailers need to remain powered. Grass Valley has created a microgrid and would be a resource for information in this matter. Thank you for your forethought. Kelly Delapane, to help our community power outage events this summer, please implement a microgrid for Truckee now. Bruce and Angela Denny, as concerned full-time Truckee residents, we want to voice our support for Truckee implementing a microgrid this summer as a backup for potential power outages. Marcia Groden, regarding possibly multi-day power outage, please consider installing a microgrid along the Old Donner Highway and through downtown Truckee to ensure that we have access to groceries, hospitals, restaurants, banking, fire departments, schools, EV charging, and other vital services. This might also prove useful under certain dire winter conditions.
Once again, you have disappeared, Shauna.
Just taking Helen Linker, To help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer, please implement a microgrid Truckee now. Thank you. Rob McLaughlin, to help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer, please consider implementing a microgrid for Truckee now. Sarah Walker, please implement microgrid, do everything possible to preserve power to essential services, including places for computer workers to continue working from Truckee due to outages. Diana Davenport, please help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer. Please implement a microgrid for Truckee now. Danica and William Griffin, to help our community through the PSOM power outage events this summer. Please implement a microgrid for I apologize, Madam President. As a local business, we are very concerned about the prospect of losing power this summer and fall due to wildfire prevention outages, not just for our livelihoods, but for the community as well. New Moon Natural Foods is a grocery store carrying perishable provisions for our community. The Truckee community relies on us for over 1 million of food sales per month, especially in a situation where residents may not have refrigeration. It's all the more important to have a local grocery stores be able to provide daily shopping needs. If we and other grocery stores along DPR are closed, not only will the community have limited access to food during the outage, but it will take an extra day or more to restock. Furthermore, with everyone trying to restock their homes at once, supply and demand imbalances will resonate throughout the community for weeks before finally rebalancing. Our business has been trying for 18 months to procure our own generators, but COVID supply problems and the Texas debacle have made large-scale independent power generation difficult to obtain. Our community needs open grocery stores and restaurants and hospital, etc. Please do what you must to implement a microgrid for Truckee ASAP. Thank you for your hard work and consideration to these difficult items. I have two more, President Fenn. Kelly Thayer wrote in, I feel strongly compelled to write and express my feelings that TDPUD board should stop pursuing legal action against Kim Harris and just let her serve her community. She won the election fairly, beating 3 incumbents as she ran on transparency and fiscal responsibility. I'd like to understand what the board is trying to accomplish with this legal action. Kim is a valued member of the community and should be treated as such. And finally, Mike Wolf. I would like to show my support for a local agency collaboration group for greenhouse gas reduction. This is a long overdue in Truckee, and the PUD will be a major player for realizing our GHG goals. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Shauna. You earned a glass of water. Thank you. I am going to, our next section of the agenda is the director update, and I am going to sort of roll my group response to all of those comments into my director comment, sort of all in one thing.
President Finn?
President, I have one more public comment out there.
Okay.
Hello. Thank you for allowing my comments this evening. I am Barney Dewey, a resident of Truckee. I've become aware that NV Energy may be cutting power to TDPUD in Truckee through their PSOM program, similar to PG&E's PSPS program. To mitigate the outages, I strongly believe that district needs to implement a microgrid for downtown Truckee and the medical and business districts along Donner Pass Road. Having restaurants, businesses, medical services, and grocery stores open during these events that could be 3 to 5 days long is important to us living in Truckee. I believe it is more effective for TDPUD to provide a microgrid than having everybody, such as the hospital, doctor's offices, restaurants, grocery stores, gas stations, provide their own backup power. PG&E has established a microgrid for Grass Valley, It has been effective in mitigating the many problems that extended power shutoffs cause there. I understand that NV Energy's PSOM events are out of TDPUD's control and are not the district's fault. However, I do think providing a microgrid to Truckee is the utility's responsibility. I believe after a couple of the PSOM events, the residents of Truckee will be angry with the utility if a microgrid hasn't been provided. I believe the microgrid provides needed services that shows that the utility is taking actions to mitigate the consequences of the PSOM events. Given Grass Valley's experience with the microgrid solution, we are not ignorant of the situation and the ramifications that PSOM events will bring Truckee. I believe that TDPUD should take responsibility now to provide critical power to Truckee by obtaining and operating a microgrid generators. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. I believe that Council Gross had something to share with me.
Thank you. I just wanted to suggest you might call for other public comment. I don't know if anybody else participating here via Zoom might have public comment.
Are there any more public comments out there?
No, Madam President.
Thank you, Shauna. Okay, thank you, everybody. I really do want to thank you all for your comments and for sharing your concerns. It does hardly seem fair that we just got finished being COVIDed for a year and now we're being peace-armed. And I hear you loud and clear. I hear your anxiety and I share it to an extent. I do want everybody to know that we are coordinating with our sister agencies, including the town of Truckee, the hospital district, the airport, Nevada County, our emergency services, our business community, and our nonprofit communities to make sure that we are all doing all that we can together to ensure that this community is informed, prepared, and supported through whatever happens this summer. Including helping to create community resource centers for cooling, for water, for charging our devices, and for disseminating information during an event. So it is our job at the PUD to keep the lights on and the water flowing. And when they go down, it is our responsibility to bring them back up as quickly and safely as possible, and we will be doing that. On the subject of microgrids, it is equally gratifying and frustrating to hear all of this feedback. I absolutely agree that microgrids are going to be a key to our town's energy resilience. I wish that they were as quick and easy to deploy as I hoped they would be. But they are not. It does not mean they're impossible. It just means that we need time and money, just like everything else. I am hopeful that this moment in time will clarify the importance of some sort of local generation for our town and to help us as a community to prioritize that. I would like to point out that we have 2 items on the agenda tonight that do just that, that move those goals forward. Items number 14 and number 16. The PUD is 100% committed to helping solve this problem. And everybody is going to have to be committed, from individual actions like keeping your gas tank full and ice chest, buying ice ahead of time. We will have forewarning, to district actions, to coordinated community actions. Because the problem is not that the power might go off in Truckee for 3 days this summer. The problem is climate change. A PSOM is a stopgap measure that we cannot respond to by making the underlying problem worse. Our microgrid solutions are going to have to be clean and renewable. Because again, the problem is climate change. Hundreds of people lost their lives this week in the Pacific Northwest under a crushing heat wave. The Gulf of Mexico is literally on fire. 65% of the salmon hatch this year in the Klamath River are dead. They died from heat. Hurricane Elsa made landfall today in Florida, by 6 weeks, the earliest hurricane ever to make landfall in this country. Truckee is going to hit 95 degrees this weekend. My heart is breaking. So let's support each other and survive through this moment in time. But then let's do better. I encourage everybody to visit our website to see what you as an individual can do to be the most prepared this summer. Make your plan. You as one person are powerful. We as a district are more powerful. And we will pursue policies that create sustainable solutions. But we all together, as a community, as all of our agencies, are the most powerful of all. We can unite our voices, we can unite our wills and our finances, and we as a community can agree on actions that we can take to create a community that is resilient and that can survive and even thrive during these times of challenge and of change. So I agree, microgrids are going to be a solution, but we have to move, and we have to move correctly. So we will be exploring all of the opportunities here. That is going to end that part of my comment. I have one more housekeeping item. A couple of meetings ago, I said that when I found out what the final bill from Peckham McKinney was, I would share that information. And the total was $6,074.86. It's in our disbursements for this meeting. So that's all for me this evening. I'm sorry I took up a little more time, but those were lots of comments. So I will now ask other directors if they have any director comments this evening. Okay, I see 2 hands raised. Director Harris, you can go first.
Thank you, President Finn. Staff presented to the Town Council on the PSOM fire outages. I would like to see staff to continue to give these presentations to the community, but I'd also like them to give them to our own PUD board and give us the opportunity of benefiting from this presentation and to ask questions ourselves as staff regarding these outages. I humbly request that it be agendized at the next board meeting and the power grid idea and proposal to be included in that agenda item. In addition, the PUD lost another longtime employee to early retirement last week. Sarah Owens has been a loyal, competent, and overall awesome employee of the PUD for 20 years. Her professionalism, attention to detail, and approachable attitude has served the PUD and its customers and local contractors for many, many years. Her wealth of institutional knowledge will be sorely missed, and I wish her well in her future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris. Director Laliotis, I thought I had seen your hand go up.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for all your comments, especially to the public. I understand the concerns out there. Obviously, we also have the same concerns, but as Director Finn so passionately pointed out, that solutions come these are long-term issues and long-term solutions, and we need to work together to solve these issues. You know, I am confident that staff will continue to pursue what we can to help this community through these PSOMs. You know, we are a resilient community as it stands. Multi-day power outages are something that we have been prepared for and have experienced for many, many years. And so while the concern is out there, I also feel like we have a significant amount of preparation in place within our community to handle some of these. However, that being said, as Director Finn stated, this is a much larger issue and a much which requires a much larger solution. So I encourage this board to continue to look under every stone, encourage staff to continue to bring solutions to this community and to this board for what the future holds for our community's resiliency, not only to PSOM, but to climate change in general. So thanks to the community for your input. This is not something that will happen tomorrow. We are, as board members, charged with fiscal responsibility. And we must make sure that expenses towards microgrids or whatever these solutions are in the best interest of the community as a whole, and not just a subset that feels that this is important. So we want to do this properly. We want to do this to make sure that the community understands not only what the benefit is, but what the benefit will cost. As a public agency versus a private entity such as PG&E, there are significant differences in how we do business. So those need to be also evaluated and understood. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. Do we have any other director comments this evening? Okay, I see none. Therefore, we shall move on to item number 7, which is the general manager's update. Brian?
Thank you, President Finn. I will keep mine brief with consideration of all the presentations still left to go. So I wanted to echo the sentiments of happy birthday to Director Aguera. Happy birthday, Joe.
Well, thank you, Brian.
I also wanted to, on the topic of PSOM, based, clearly from the comments submitted by the public this evening and all of our engagement over the last several weeks, I want to give a special thanks to the town of Truckee, town manager Jen Calloway, Bob Womack, the Nevada County with Steve and Paul Cummings in the Office of Emergency Services, the Chamber of Commerce and all the business sector representatives working with us and having the dialogue. I also want to thank Nevada County Supervisor Hardy Bullock, who's been facilitating, coordinating a lot of communication here locally, a lot of dialogue, a lot of kind of brainstorming and troubleshooting on how we get through this summer, and then really be able to explore opportunities for long-term solutions. So we hear you loud and clear, as the board has just pointed out, and we're working collaboratively here to get through this. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you very much, Brian. Which great pleasure to our next item number 8. We have a presentation from the Friends of the Library that I know that I am going to enjoy. So let's see, I'm going to imagine it's either Louise or Kathleen is going to be presenting for us.
Well, am I able to screen share? Will that work, Krista? Okay, you're on mute, Krista.
I
Yes.
imagine. Okay, we had a yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, okay, that's great. Well, so I'm going to go ahead and go to screen share. But I am Louise Zabriskie, president of the Friends of the Truckee Library. And with me tonight is Kathleen Egan, a board member. And we're delighted for this opportunity to be able to share with you our Library Up campaign to bring a new library facility to our community. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and find my presentation. Just 1 minute. Okay. It's going to take me just a minute. It was here a minute ago. There we go. Okay, and I'm assuming everyone can see the presentation?
Actually, no.
Okay, then I have to go back and share my screen again.
Ah,
There it is.
very good.
Okay. There we are. Okay, again, thank you so much for having us here tonight. We're very excited to share our presentation with you.
Before we get started here,
Oh.
Louise,
Okay. Yes, Kath.
I just wanted to highlight that our objective this evening is to give you a brief look at the community outreach campaign we've been conducting over the last 10 months. So you, as elected officials, have a firsthand look at the message behind the vision of this new facility. We are really excited about the project and we hope you will be as well. So go ahead, Louise.
Okay, thank you.
To me, a library, I've always thought of it as really a pillar of civilization. It is such a foundational civic presence in really any community. It's a place of learning. It's a place of knowledge. It's a place of culture. It's a place of community. It's not just about books on a shelf. It really encompasses who we are and what we are as a civilization.
We provide free, equal, and equitable access to all members of the community, regardless of who they are or where they come from. I think one of the most interesting things that we're seeing here at the Truckee Library is just the number of people who come into our building every day. Last year, we added about 1,000 new patrons. One of the areas that we are a little bit limited by is by the space that we have to offer programs.
I think our library staff does an amazing job with the facility that we currently have. And I think, having the ability to accommodate more students, more adults, the space available that would be for online, for additional print materials, I think all of those things would be possible in a new, larger state-of-the-art library.
I was just really surprised at the size of the town and how much the town has grown in the 20 years since I've been living here and left and came back, to see no growth in the library.
Our current library in Truckee was built in 1975 when the population was about 2,000. It is just under 5,000 square feet, and now our community serves over 17,000 people, and we should have a library that's 4 times the size. Truckee deserves a library with a physical infrastructure that's just as amazing as what's happening inside of it. And we need to foster that potential for growth of programs, resources, inventory for our growing community.
Part of the process of designing and planning for a new library is going to be engagement with the community to understand what the community expects, what the community wants. And then with that input, we'll know exactly what we need to incorporate, what needs to be incorporated into the library.
The ability to meet at the library and have a space where students can explore and learn and create outside of the classroom.
In a new library, I would like to see just a hangout area, a place to do homework.
I can see a new library as being a place where we meet and we share and we inspire each other.
I would really like to have a filming room because I want to learn how to film.
We need a modern library. We need a library that shows possibility, and we need a place where people can have access to resources.
Just more programming, the capacity to have more programming for kids especially, I think would be really wonderful.
Well, mostly all the fish books are my favorite books.
A library for a community can really say a lot about what it values. The love of learning, inspiration, a warm and welcome place to be for all ages, flexible room configurations or even flexible furniture, group meetings. Meetings, interactions, story times, virtual reality. There are so many options that I think could be possible with a new space.
We are ready for this library. Our community wants this library. Our community deserves this library. And now's the time.
So our library was built 45 years ago when we had a population of about 2,000 people. I think Joe was here 45 years ago. Yet we still have a 4,600 square foot library. We simply do not have the space to provide what modern libraries offer their communities. Current library standards call for a 20,000 square foot facility. Truckee is behind the times, and we are ready for a new library.
The 21st Century Library is a gathering place for all ages to learn new skills, experience art and cultural programs, plus read new books. They have become the heart of their communities. Modern libraries now serve as a point of access to the enormous world of online information, busting the myth that libraries are just for books.
A library says a lot about a community. It says a lot about what its values are. To help you imagine the possibilities, we'd like to share with you what some other small towns are doing with their libraries.
First, Steamboat Springs, a town that's a lot like Truckee. The Steamboat Springs Library is a warm, welcoming, and interactive building. It's like an extended living room, a place somewhere in between school, home, and work. The library has become one of the premier assets in the town. After a 25,000 square foot expansion, patronage increased dramatically. Annual visits went up by 37%, and circulation increased by 61%. And with additional space for technology, computer use increased by 167%. The library's computer stations are in constant demand. But what is amazing, a town smaller than Truckee, more than 1,000 people visit this library on an average every day.
According to city officials in Half Moon Bay, their library has become a transformative facility. It's only 2 years old, and it benefits every demographic, every person, but especially those who don't have resources or a quiet place to study or internet at home. This award-winning building emphasizes spaces that serve as a community hub for all. The library is often referred to as the heart of the city. The library has become the place where everyone goes, whether it's for meetings, job interviews, or to hang out between soccer games. So now that you've seen what other communities like ours have accomplished, let's imagine what a modern library facility could look like in Truckee.
Building a connected community requires space, the right space, inspiring space, comfortable space, flexible space. There are really few places in our community other than private homes, bars, or restaurants where people can meet, exchange ideas, collaborate, or just chat. Modern libraries have spaces that enable people to act independently, collaborate, or create connections. They help build the social fabric of the community by providing places for people of all ages and walks of life to meet in groups, large and small. The most successful modern libraries have space for programming that is at the core of creating an active community hub. With the new community room in Half Moon Bay, program attendance increased 78% in the first year the library opened.
In addition, our chamber refers to growing our own as providing opportunities for locals to live, work, and thrive in their own hometown. Some of our special districts see this new library as an ideal central location for job promotion, with adequate space for job training programs and certification classes, in addition to providing coaching workshops on resume writing and interviewing skills.
Our children need an exciting, engaging place for the array of programs offered by our library and with enough space to accommodate our growing community. Our librarians recognize the value of a dedicated area for our teens, but we just do not have the space. Our teens need a place to study, collaborate on projects, maybe have access tools for creating videos, photography, or their music, or maybe just a place to hang out with their friends.
In today's connected world, the internet isn't a luxury, it's truly a necessity. Technology and high-speed internet access is increasingly needed for full participation in educational, cultural, and employment opportunities. Having the space to provide technology, connectivity, and training to all is a critical component in closing the digital divide. We look forward to partnership opportunities that may arise with the PUD's Community Broadband Initiative and the construction of a new library.
Whoops, wrong way. Well, we are making progress. Our partnership with Nevada County and the town of Truckee has been crucial in bringing this vision to reality.
I hope you enjoyed that fly through. It really helps us imagine what this new space could look like, but maybe more importantly, what it could feel like. What you didn't see in the fly through was the collaborative learning set areas and meeting spaces. There are quiet zones plus space for computer areas. There is a much needed expansion of the staff area, and there are outdoor gathering spaces bordering the lawn at Regional Park. This conceptual design will be refined and improved as more community input is gathered about the spaces that are most important to our town. So we have a site through a vital partnership with the Truckee-Donner Recreation and Park District. A 2-acre site at Regional Park has been set aside for our new 20,000 square foot library. The town, Rec and Park, Sanitary District, and the PUD are working out the details of how to best approach land ownership intricacies on the site. And I have to say, it's been a real pleasure working with Brian Wright, and we thank the PUD for its positive involvement in this effort.
We envision the funding for this new library will come from a combination of sources.
We've completed the conceptual plans, which is what you saw with the fly-through, and we are now collectively working on developing our governance structure. The county, together with the town and the Friends, is in the process of hiring a consultant to explore a joint powers authority. We are well on our way to building community awareness, yet as you can see in this timeline, it's really important to note that the process will span multiple years to get this library constructed.
There are a number of ways that community members can support our new library efforts.
And we want to emphasize that community support is growing for a new library that has the space we need. To date, over 140 individuals, families, or businesses have shown their commitment by donating $1,000 to become a Library Up luminary or $2,500 to become a business luminary. These funds are earmarked for startup development costs. And our luminary initiative dramatically demonstrates to elected officials, large donors, and grantors that this community is serious about, is invested in, and is committed to building a new library.
Our community has an amazing track record for making great things happen. The Legacy Trail, the Rec Center, and the Humane Society, to name just a few. So together, we can build a library that will be a true cultural center and add it to Truckey's list of achievements. It's time for us to dream big and ensure that our library is a true reflection of our diverse and amazing community. Thank you again for including us on your agenda today. We appreciate your interest in our Library Up campaign and our efforts to bring a much needed, modern, spacious library to our community. And we're now happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you.
I am going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this presentation?
Oh, Madam President.
Thank you. In which case, I will open up to my fellow directors. I'm a big library fan, and I think you both know where I stand. And I think the presentation is great. I think you are right. Our town needs a real library. So I will step back.
Thanks, Kathleen and Louise. It's always a pleasure to watch this presentation and dream about a brand new library in Truckee. I would love to see for the PUD's logo to be up there as a community supporter. And there is, lots of education that we can do through a brand new library. So hopefully where there's a will, there's a way. But I hope that it works out and we are able to help support the new library. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. If there's a will, there's a way. Just let us know if the board decides they would like to be shown as a partner. We would appreciate that and welcome that.
The location of the building was at the recreation park. Is that what I heard in there?
That's right, Joe. It's at the regional park, about where the farmer's market currently sits.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so that's why I said, those outdoor gathering spaces, will border on the big lawn there between the new library location and the ball fields.
Okay. And the project hasn't started as yet.
Oh no, we got a ways to go. Got a lot to do.
Okay.
Before that, but we're making progress with the help of really an awful lot of people in town.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's great.
Listening to Brian's comments about working with and Krista's comments about working with the sister agencies and collaborating and working together on common issues. We're experiencing the same thing and the same positive attitude with regard to the library. It's very exciting. It's very rewarding. It's Truckee. It's Truckee.
We've come a long way. Thank you.
No, I want to thank Kathleen, Louise. What a great presentation. And I really applaud the enthusiasm. It's so easy now to get lost in this digital craziness that we are all experiencing, and to get back to a common core of, different generations, in the form of a library, and then really bringing it back around to this community and what it meant and what it means and what it should be. I really thank you guys for more or less donating your time and efforts to something that is taking so much time, but is so you're so passionate about and have done such a good job to lift it up and make it something that's important to this community. I applaud that, and I support, our staff and this board continuing to work with your group and trying to keep this thing moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I'd just like to add that I really appreciate that you and Lisa are both luminaries, as Jeff and his wife Yvette and their family. So thank you very much for your support, both of you. So we appreciate it a lot.
No problem.
So.
Yeah, thank you. So as you just said, me and my family, we're in full support. The presentation, excellent presentation. So thank you, Kathleen, Louise. Really nice to see the sketches, the walkthrough. It's exciting. And you will continue to have my family's support and also as a board member on the PUD. So 2 thumbs up from over here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Excellent. Well, I will echo all of that again. This evening, this was just a presentation, but not an action item, but it sounds as though this board is very receptive to seeing something come in front of it that would enable us to be a more active partner. So.
President Finn, I would like to kind of build on that. First, thank you, Kathleen and Louise. Great presentation. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now, and it's more exciting each time. I'm just amazed at the walkthrough, digital walkthrough. That's awesome. The board of directors here, staff will be coming in the future. As Kathleen pointed out, this is very early in the process, but the district does have an opportunity in terms of property and the underground fiber and broadband community broadband opportunities. So look forward to that in the future, and we look forward to working with the Friends of the Library.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our next item on the agenda, we have another presentation that I am very much looking forward to. We have, I believe, Chief Saleen, Bill Saleen, going to give us a presentation on Measure T. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, President Finn and directors for having me tonight. And it's always difficult to follow that presentation, Kathleen and Louise, and very exciting. And then now I have to bring everybody back with the wildfire threat. But exciting stuff, and wish you all the best.
I think Bill has seen this presentation 4 times now. Seem to be matching each other and reaching out to the special districts. So thank you all, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I have to build a fly through of the forest, and so I can keep up with that. But no, thank you again for having me. I appreciate it. And I know most of you on the call. My name, of course, is Bill Saleen. I'm the fire chief at the Truckee Fire Protection District. I'm also here with Pam Hobday, who I know you all know. She is one of the key members of the Wildfire Prevention Measure T campaign. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to give a presentation on Measure T from an informational standpoint from the fire district. And then I believe Pam may want to say a few words at the end of my presentation representing the Measure T campaign. But before I get started, can I, Shauna, do you mind if I share my screen?
Please do, Chief.
Thank you. All right, everybody can see that? Okay. I realize I'm speaking to a board and a staff that are very familiar with the wildfire threat. And frankly, investing in wildfire safety. So I plan to move fairly quickly through some of the background information to get to the meat of the measure. But I want to make sure that I frame it correctly for anybody else that may be watching that is not familiar or new to the area. I think this map is interesting, and maybe some of you have seen it before, but if you look at this map, this is the 100-year fire history of our area. And you can see that the Truckee Donner Summit area is circled in red at the bottom. And I think there's sort of two takeaways from the map. I know it's a little bit difficult and busy to read, but let me just point out that first, if you notice, in the last 100 years or so, similar to most mountain communities, I think, especially in California, we've been able to avoid or suppress any big fires in and around our neighborhoods. And of course, what this means to us is that fire fuels and dead trees and branches and pine needles and bushes have all built up to these unnatural levels in these areas around our neighborhoods. The second thing that I think is important that you can see in this map is that the yellow areas are the areas where big fires have run through our area over the last 100 years, and many of them in the last 50 years. And Joe, of course, was involved with the fire district and will remember some of these big fires. So, the point is that our area is not immune from these big fires. We've been successful at keeping them small and maybe a little bit lucky. Of course, this slide is probably no surprise to any of you, and this is our current drought conditions in California. And you can see that most all of California is in a severe or extreme or exceptional drought. And of course, Truckee area is no exception. What does that mean for fire danger? And I think it's probably obvious, but severe drought leads to a drying of the fuels, these fire fuels earlier and more significantly than in an average year. Even when we get these events of rain, once the bush or the tree is dead, we don't get uptake of the moisture, even from those wet conditions. So although it's encouraging and it wets the grass down for a day, the wind picks up and things get back to as dry as they were before. CAL FIRE is reporting that fuels and fire conditions are about 4 to 8 weeks ahead of a typical year. And this is playing out right now in a far above average number of fires and acres burned for this time of year already. And we're just finishing June. This map shows that the chances of a significant fire in our area, and as you can see in August, this is the picture of August, they're predicting that we will be in above normal for a significant fire once we hit August. And this will likely persist to the fall as well. And unfortunately, I think, President Finn mentioned climate change, and I think that's a theme that runs through the entire presentation that I don't talk a lot about, but it's sort of obvious, with these reoccurring droughts that we've been having and the dry conditions. And it plays out in these fire conditions that look similar to this picture that we see relatively routinely over the last 10 or 15 years, unfortunately. Some of you may remember the drought year of 2007, and this picture across the top shows 3 of the fires that happened nearby that year. I think the Angora fire in South Lake Tahoe is probably the most memorable that I know some of you probably remember. It started from an escaped illegal campfire, burned down about 250 homes in the afternoon in a neighborhood, frankly, that didn't look any different than any of our neighborhoods. The other photos are pictures of our crews that they've taken when they were out fighting some of the recent mega fires that have happened. They report back that the buildup of fuels and the dry conditions, and of course we see it on the news, but it's sort of strong anecdotal data when our experienced firefighters say, yeah, things are really hot and intense, more so than we have ever seen before. And of course, the thing that I think strikes all of us is that those bottom 4 pictures are fires. 3 of them happened last year. 2 of those, the Creek Fire in the North Complex, were over 300,000 acres, and they're in Sierra forests. And it's a little bit close to home. So the bigger question is, what do we do about it and what are we doing about it? And I know, some of these things the PUD is involved with intimately in fuels reduction. And we sure appreciate that partnership and the great work that you all do year in, year out. Of course, it's a multi-pronged or a stool, three-legged stool type approach that we think about to manage wildland fire risk in the wildland urban interface. And it really centers around removing fuels. And, we remove fuels, reduce fuels on larger pieces of land. And then we also do it around our homes on the more micro scale. Reducing fire starts, of course, the fire ban and those sort of things. When we see opportunities, we want to take those and be as aggressive as we can with reducing fire start possibilities. There's a piece of this that's about personal responsibility, and our education centers around, what can people do to help support the effort and reduce the risk of wildfire. And then, of course, a robust fire response, which is no surprise to any of you. And I think we're lucky to live in an area that has, with the Forest Service Fire Station and Cal Fire Station, a robust local wildfire response and multiple agreements with lots of different fire agencies that we're lucky to have such a good response. And that's important because there will be wildfires, but our job, of course, is to keep those small fires small if we can at all help it. So, we talk about the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface, and I know you're all very familiar with that term. But here's a map that shows our communities and the areas in and around those communities where we at the fire district focus our efforts. Although we're interested in the entire forest and we talk about, fuel buildup in the forest and that sort of thing. I just want to make sure I'm clear that, our focus is on reducing catastrophic fire in our communities. And we focus on the areas in the bubbles that are in and around our neighborhoods, which is probably obvious to all of you. Here's an example of the large land fuel reduction projects that I know the PUDs participated in the past on your lands. This is a current one that I wanted to give you a quick update on. It's the Glenshire to Brockway Fire Break. It's about 1,000 acres. It was funded by the National Forest Foundation and Cal Fire. You can see, machinery working in here to reduce that fuel buildup that we know is out there, thin the forest to more natural conditions. Of course, the picture on the left is beautiful and is aesthetic, and people sometimes even think, gosh, I moved to the mountains for that type of thing, but we know that's not natural. It won't sustain the forest, especially during these climate change conditions. There's just not enough resources like water to support all that beautiful greenery. And of course, there's so much overgrowth that if a fire started, it would be very intense. So this fire break is about 80% complete. I'm happy to report, and the crews have been out working in the month of June quite a bit. And the picture on the right was just taken a week or so ago. Of course, it grows back. Some of the ground fuels grow back, and it looks much more appealing. But you can see that it's much thinner and it's natural. If a fire did move through that forest, it would be much easier for fire crews to contain. We know, of course, these fuel breaks work. And like in this example in Tahoe Donner and the I-80 fire in 2007, which happened to be one of those fires in that drought year, the fire was coming up the hill from Donner Lake. And if you look closely out front of the fire, you can see where the brush had been reduced sort of in a mosaic pattern. The fire hit that area. It slowed down enough for crews to knock down the fire and get on top of it. And so that fuel work is important, but probably not happening at the pace and the scale that we would all want. Of course, no presentation is complete without mentioning defensible space. And we have maybe 21,000 parcels in the fire district, and about 15,000 of those have structures, most of which are homes, residents on those. And there are people there that if they take some personal responsibility and we're able to provide some education and feedback on how they're doing, that we can work in partnership to really make another significant dent in the fuels challenge. Of course, one of the biggest barriers to the people that own and try to manage those properties is the increasing cost and difficulty of getting rid of the green waste and the defensible space waste, which I think you're probably familiar with. But it's very concerning to us. So that brings me to what I really want to talk about in closing. But of course, I have to sort of start with that background to make sure I frame this correctly. In 2016, the district facilitated this process. It was called a Community Wildfire Prevention Planning Process, or CWPP. And a lot of communities do this. And essentially is a comprehensive plan that addresses the wildfire threat and really specifically the fuels issue that we have seen building, especially in the last 20 years or so. In our plan, thousands of acres were identified that needed fuel reduction work. Many agencies like the PUD went to work, did a significant amount of fuel reduction on their lands. The fire district was successful in winning about $3 million in grants for fuel reduction projects, and some of those are going on today. However, looking back over 5 years and thinking about all those wonderful accomplishments, I have to tell you that in summary, it's just not enough. It's not enough to really move the dial and to be able to say we did everything that we could. Cost is the biggest barrier. Like I think President Finn pointed out in microgrid discussion that like this, cost is a challenge. The grants are inconsistent. I'd like to tell you that we could get a lot of grants, and we hear the governor talking a lot about it. Unfortunately, it's a lot of hyperbole, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate the focus, but they're just not enough, and they're still inadequate. The state says it's about a $2 to $3 billion a year problem, the fuels problem in the state of California. And to put that in perspective, there's maybe around $100 million that'll actually go to fuels work this year. And we would be lucky to get a little piece of that. Most of that money will go to protect large communities in Southern California and the Bay Area and those sort of things. So there's a bit of triage that goes on. So the fire district, watches all this, and we want to move the dial. We see a solution on the horizon. We surveyed voters last winter, and a couple things came out of the survey I wanted to share with you. First, 95% of the voters said that they think wildfire is the most important issue in our area, which probably not a surprise to any of you. The second thing was that 79%, or over 3/4, said that they would pay $179 a year in a parcel tax to go into a community wildfire prevention fund that would raise about $3.7 million annually. And it would be spent on things like removing dead trees and dry brush and other fire hazards, to build environmentally sensitive fire breaks where necessary, and provide more and less expensive ways for people to get rid of their green waste and their defensible space waste. So really focused sort of feedback that we got on that. And so the board took action, and they heard that loud and clear. And they created a measure that is going to the voters in a special election that will now be combined with the governor's recall election, September 14th. I'm happy to say the measure has fiscal accountability. It has an 8-year sunset, a citizens oversight committee, and the work will be directed by an updated CWPP. And I think why that's important is that process is a collaborative process. The PUD and other land managers and citizens of the district will be invited to participate in that process. And so that plan will, truly be a collaborative plan that'll be led by fire experts to protect the community. So that's a little bit about Measure T in the background and how we got to where we are. And of course, there's a lot more detail. You can learn more about that, those details at truckyfire.org. And we have a page that is full of sort of the information side of the measure. But with that said, let me, if I could, hand it over to Pam Hobday. And as I mentioned, she's one of the key members of the Measure T campaign committee. She's working with co-chairs who I think many of you know, Paco Lindsay and Dave Diamond, and they've been busy. So I'll let her say a couple things, and then I'm open for questions after that as well. Thank you.
Well, I'm really happy to see each of you and just be a citizen tonight, a resident of Truckee. And I'm having great fun working with Paco and David and Chief Celine and the entire committee. I'm passionate about Measure T because it speaks about a fire district that is really stepping up to do something that fire districts normally don't do. And that's look at how we can protect our own community. And so when you think about $179 parcel tax for 8 years, the sunset, what I'm especially excited about and passionate about is that the dollars are for Truckee, will stay in Truckee. The counties and the state will not be able to touch these dollars. And the oversight committee, as Chief Celine talked about, is very, very important. And we've had other measures in Truckee, like Measure C, who has had an oversight committee as well. But tonight, what the committee's really hoping from this board is we would like for you to consider endorsing Measure T. And I'd like to share with you what many of your colleagues are doing. And they are stepping up and endorsing, and we're very excited about that. So the endorsers that we have so far of entities are the Town of Truckee, the Truckee Donner Land Trust, the Truckee Tahoe Airport Board, the Truckee Trails Foundation, and we hope to have every single special district. So we're here, and President Finn and Board of Directors, we would like your serious consideration of joining our committee in supporting Measure T, and we would really like for you to consider endorsing Measure T. And I want to also say we have over 300 endorsements right now, and we've just started. It's a great list, and I was very happy to see personal endorsements by you, President Finn, and you, Director Harris. Thank you so much. So, President Finn, I'm going to turn that back to you. And what should be our next steps?
Well, thank you very much, Pam. Thank you very much, Chief Celine. It was a pleasure. First thing I'm going to do is open it up to public comment. If we have any public comment on this presentation tonight.
No, Madam President.
Thank you, Shauna. And now I'm going to open it up to our directors for discussion. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, Director Harris.
Hi, yes, I do support this measure, absolutely. Our family, my husband's parents actually lost their fire in the car fire in Reading, and it's absolutely devastating to see what can happen when a devastating wildfire happens. So, in rebuilding that. So anything that we can do to prepare our forests and our community for it, I'm absolutely for. The Fire Protection District you guys are a great organization, and I think having this as a ballot measure is a smart move, and I absolutely support it.
Thanks, Director Harris.
Thank you, Director Harris. Do we have any other director comments or questions?
Well, I, for one, are really afraid of wildfires. I had the occasion to go down to to Southern California to Shaver Lake, where the biggest fire in California was started last September, I guess it was. And it was devastating. It just scared me to death. And it's an area just like ours. Forest and brush and everything else. And it's amazing what the fire department has done there, because the little village of Shaver Lake was at the end of the town. There was the fire, and in the middle of the town, and the town itself was all contained. It was saved. And a friend of mine bought a house up there. That's why I was there visiting him. And his property and that side of the highway was protected because it had homes in it. And I just got to give the the firefighters the greatest praise for cut the fire here, let it burn over there, but don't burn here. And it's amazing how you keep it contained like that. The chief, I commend you guys. And I was a fire commissioner here in this town for about 12 years. And like you say, firefighters, forest fires are the worst thing that, we had a little thunderstorm last week. They said it started thundering and lightning. And I'm looking up over my house here and it's blue skies. And I'm going, oh dear God, put some rain with these lightning bolts. And I was hoping that the lightning was up in the sky instead of hitting the ground. But apparently they hit the ground anyway. But all of a sudden it started to rain, and what a relief it was to see that. And to prevent and clear these forests before, and I support this bill because that's what it's supposed to intend to do, right, Chief?
That's right.
Prepare the forests without this undergrowth. And it was, like I'm saying, I'm in support of it, and I will do my job. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
I'll pass on your praise to the firefighters.
Thank you.
Director Laliotis to Director Bender, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just real briefly, thanks, Chief Celine and Pam for taking your time this evening to bring this measure to this board and request endorsement. This is obviously something that is going to become more and more of an issue. And as Director Finn stated earlier with regards to PSOM is we need to take the bull by the horns and deal with these issues locally, and as best we can be prepared. And as you alluded to, Chief Celine, the grants and the state agencies who are fighting for all this money. It is while I know you will pursue that to the nth degree, the fact that if we can establish at least some of our own resources to fund our own wildfire mitigation measures in this community and use that money directly in this community, I think is very important. So I support Measure T and the efforts that this community is and the agencies involved that are trying to push this through. So I would encourage staff to perhaps work with district council on how we pursue endorsement of this measure as a governing board.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. Director Bender, I see you're unmuted.
Yep, unmuted. Yeah, thank you, Pam. Thank you, Chief Celine. Good presentation, a little, somewhat depressing on the fires, but we've got to do it. We've got to take the right step and continue moving forward. And I too support Measure T, so full on board with that. And we got to do the hard work. And this is that step to do that hard work. So really appreciate everyone's hard work on that measure, and I'm in support of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Bender. I have just a quick question for Chief Celine. What are you planning to do with the biomass that you're thinning?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you know, there's challenges with getting rid of biomass, and it's going to be a multi-pronged approach. And I think there's some short-term solutions of hauling biomass out of the area to local or regional biomass facilities, but that's costly, and we like to see longer-term, closer solutions. We're actually in early stages of talks with the town and the airport district about doing our own biomass facility that would provide heat energy to one of our fire stations and the town hall and the airport facilities, and hoping that that'll get some legs. And but that won't solve it all. That'll be 1/10 of the solution. We'll be increasing the amount of biomass coming out of our communities, and then with more challenges. So we hope that more wood products become available. It's not just of course a Truckee or regional problem. It's much bigger than that, and there are lots of people working on various solutions, and we hope that we'll benefit from some of those in the future too.
Thank you. That sounds like a conversation that I would like to be listening on a little bit, because maybe it could be 1/10 of our microgrid solution as well, if we are all walking together in the same direction. I also support the bill. I've already endorsed it. I think our board is pretty united in our understanding and willingness to endorse this as a governing board. And as Director Vice President Laliotis said, hopefully we would like staff to come back to us with a resolution to support this Measure T. And I think that we'll do it. Gosh, thank you all so much. It's been already a busy meeting. It's not even.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yes, thank you from the committee so much. And I want to echo what Kathleen said. How great to have collaboration, with the town, with special districts, with agencies, and really taking care of our own issues in Truckee. So thank you to each one of you.
Thank you. It's great to know what we're all doing. Okay. Wow. A busy night. Now, item 10, we have a public hearing this evening related to changes in the district code, Appendix C and miscellaneous fees. We as a board discussed these a meeting ago. So we are going to conduct a public hearing in consideration of public comments and hopefully adopt the recommended changes to the district code, Appendix C, miscellaneous fees, A, add a flat fee for residential solar installations, and B, new account setup, removing the $30 discount for the last meter read. So I am now going to open this public hearing. And do we have a staff presentation to go with this?
Good evening, President Finn and members of the board. Mike Salmon here, Chief Financial Officer. I have a presentation. I can share the screen and show that if you'd like.
Please.
This is action item 10, a public hearing related to changes to District Code Appendix C, miscellaneous fees. The district manages through board policies the district code, and modifications to the district code and fees is at the discretion of the board. We properly noticed these cleanup items, I call it cleanup items, to the miscellaneous fee schedule a bit over a month ago, and are now holding the public hearing. The first item is setting a flat fee for residential solar connections, and there's roughly 25 in 2020 and 11 in 2019, and we're looking at estimating somewhere in the 30 range for 2021 and going forward, in part due to some changes in California regulatory matters related to solar requirements, as you're all aware. The process to date has been here at the district to handle this on a time and materials basis as far as the fee structure, and this is the steps involved. Staff is recommending a flat fee. There are significant benefits to both the customer as well as internal staff in processing residential solar connections by going to a flat fee, which we do for other things as well. We looked at a few other utilities. Lodi is at a 676 range, and Roseville is about 811. Lassen is a little bit less. Our average cost estimate on the processing of 2020 residential solar was an average of $510, and staff is recommending a flat fee starting now here mid-2021 at $550. The second item is related to the kind of a cleanup on the description that's kind of a legacy holdover from a long time ago before we had automated meters where we could read the meters from here through the systems. And in the past, we had to do special meter reads when there was a disconnect or a change in service between accounts, and we had to do a special meter read. It's kind of an incremental cost that was incurred, and so we allowed a discount of $30. There's no real cost savings currently. We've had automated meters for quite a while, and there was an incremental cost of the meters themselves that essentially was an offset to the meter reading cost out there. And so, let's see. The meter to establish a new account is estimated to be $75.98 currently, and that's not including the cost burdens for software and hardware cost. The current rate of $60 is discounted to that, and we're not recommending to increase that current fee of $60. This is a very few number of customers that we experience this that do not have automated readers where we would need to go out and read the meters themselves. So we're recommending to eliminate that $30 discount in the flat fee, on the new account setup. Fiscal impact, there's some time savings involved with processing with flat fee residential solar connections. We would save an estimated 3 to 4 hours per customer, and that would allow a resource shift to improve customer service in other areas of new construction matters and work orders processing. Fiscal impact for new account setups is streamlining of the process, ability to improve customer service, just pretty nominal on that. It's just, again, just a cleanup item on the district code. So with that exciting topic, after conducting the full public hearing, we recommend for approval of the proposed changes. I turn it back over to President Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon. Do we have any public comments on this public hearing?
No, Madam President, but staff is requesting one change to the ordinance that was caught after it was published. And it's a small administrative error where it says rescind as opposed to rescind. So we would like that requested change to be added to the staff recommendation.
Okay, so it sounds like a typo, which, yeah. Okay, so we'll rescind that fee. Okay. Do we have any directors' comments, questions? Looks like no. I have a quick minor question. Switching to the flat fee, if we happen to have, which we may not, excess at the end of the year, do we have a plan for that? Perhaps $1,000 for the solar. I'm speaking specifically about the solar, switching to a 550, which seemed like it was about $40 more than our average permit fee. If we had 30 of those, that were all the other average 510, we'd have like $1,200 left at the end of the year. Do we have any thoughts with what to do with that?
Well, that average of 510, the 550 is 7 to 8% more than the 510. That 510 was on 2020 figures, and so there were cost increases in personnel cost, as well as operating expenses that would increase that much closer to the 550 for 2021, and we're halfway through 2021 now. So I'm not anticipating a pretty nominal cost difference there. And then my understanding is there would not be any rebate or anything of that nature regarding, I'm not sure how I could process that if the average was less or more.
Yeah, it was.
If it's
Yeah,
$1,000. Do I go back? I can't go back. So
I was, wondering if we can put it into something for future to help perhaps subsidize low-income permit process for solar to get those solar panels on low-income houses. But that's a conversation for the future, not necessarily for this item. And I think I'm all good. Anybody else? Nope. Okay. I'm going to close this public hearing officially since we don't have any public comment. And I think I am looking for a motion. Sorry, my tablet just as per recommendation because it's not on the screen anymore.
I'll move to adopt ordinance 2021-03, changes to district code, appendix C, miscellaneous fees. Sub A, add a flat fee for residential solar installations, and B, new account setup, removing the $30 discount for last meter read.
Whew. Perfect. Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Shauna, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Bender.
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis.
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. We've made it to the consent calendar this evening. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar tonight?
No, Madam President.
Thank you. Do we have any board members who have a comment or would like to pull something from the consent calendar this evening? Yes, Director Harris.
I would like item number 13 to be pulled and presented. I see some significant issues with the salary schedules that were provided to us.
Okay, and I also am going to pull item number 14 just for a quick discussion about in light of today's microgrid comments that we got. So in which case, a slightly more condensed consent calendar, can we approve items number 11 and 12 and then discuss items 13 and 14?
So moved. 11 and 12, consent.
Second.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Bender.
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis.
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm not sure who, probably Brian, to discuss item number 13 with Director Harris.
Yeah, thank you, President Finn. Staff does not have presentations for the consent items this evening, but I am available to entertain any questions and discussion.
Okay, then I'm going to, Director Harris, please.
Yes. So I went ahead and reviewed all the salary schedules that were presented to us and found some errors on it. Number one, and I didn't identify specific which wage range or which wage range this applied to. But in a couple of them, the district clerk / executive assistant had 2 identified ranges in it. In one of them, the chief financial officer was missing out of it. In another one, the water utility director is listed twice with an asterisk. And the question, and I actually sent these to Brian earlier today, these questions. Is this for the 5% adjustment for appointment to assistant GM? Because the difference between the 2 ranges exceeds the 5%. Why is there an asterisk next to the senior accountant analyst position? There's a public information officer, strategic affairs directors listed twice. And is this also due to the assistant GM 5% increase? And then just the typo, general was spelled incorrectly. So I'm just concerned that these new wage ranges that are being presented to the board are significantly different than the ones that were presented prior. So I suggested to Brian that maybe he and staff could go through and pull this item from the consent item and maybe make these corrections. CalPERS is a very, they're a stickler for making sure that the processes are followed correctly in order to, approve pensions. And with that, the district spends a lot of money towards pensions. The employees spend a lot of money towards pensions. And I would just hate to jeopardize future pensions with CalPERS or relationships with CalPERS based on something that some of these errors could be corrected and brought to a future meeting. And then the last question I have is if there's any procedures and processes set up to prevent errors like this in the future. Any questions?
So I can, if it's at the pleasure of the board, I can answer the questions presented. Just as a note, I did send an email to the board of directors with answers to these questions a little bit earlier before the board meeting, but I can definitely answer those this evening. There was quite a bit there I can go through. I'm gonna, if it's all right with the board, I'll read the responses I had included in the email there, just so it's a little bit more organized. So the first question was in reference to positions being listed multiple times on the salary schedules. That was how they were submitted by the prior HR and finance team for 2020. This is during the negotiations with IBEW 1245 and unrepresented staff for the 2020 and 2021 wage salary schedules. I would assume, I'm making a little bit of assumptions because it was done by the previous staff, that those were to reflect some of the changes in classification, in particular, the water utility director and district clerk, executive assistant positions. There was, as you may recall, a change in classification that was discussed and negotiated during that process with the board. The chief financial officer missing in the 2020 wage schedules because that was not an official title that existed within the district. That was formerly the administrative services director. We changed that in the salary schedule for 2021. The water utility director listed as twice with an asterisk. Again, I believe that was to reflect the changes in classification. The asterisk is noting that that position is subject to a stipend with an assistant general manager appointment. That's the same with the electric utility director. Why is there an asterisk near the senior accountant analyst position? That's a carryover from the previous salary schedules. I believe noting that that position was Y-rated as I believe Director Harris was the HR manager at that time. She might have some more detail on that, but I believe the previous general manager, Mr. Hawley, had Y-rated that position. So that's where it was asked, the reason for the asterisk, I believe. The public information officer and strategic affairs director listed twice. Prior to the district utilizing the asterisk denoting the stipend, the 5% stipend for AGM appointment, the district listed the position separately. So there is a PIO strategic affairs position as a standalone position on the wage scale, and there is a strategic affairs PIO position and assistant general manager wage scale. In 2021, we determined as a staff to utilize the stipend as opposed to two separate positions. And that was reflective in the electric utility director and water utility director. Staff has duly noted the typo in general manager. I believe it was in the interim general manager description. We will note that for future changes. I believe that was all of the questions. I can expand on those more should the board desire. Oh, and the comment about the CalPERS. Staff is currently continues to work with CalPERS to ensure that our future wage scales meet all of the criteria of CalPERS. We're currently in communications with them. That is one of the reasons this item is before the board this evening, is that CalPERS has asked that the general manager positions be more accurately reflected in the schedules. In the past, in 2020, staff omitted the general manager position because that is an employment agreement, separate, negotiated independently from either the unrepresented or IBEW 1245. That was an oversight on staff, and per CalPERS request, we have now included that. So that's the major revision across all of the salary schedules, is to include the general manager negotiated employment agreement salary. And then moving forward, as you would see under the staff recommendation to approve the most recent update to 2021's wage schedule, is to actually include a salary scale for the general manager as opposed to just their current wage. So staff has included for approval, consideration and approval by the board this evening, a wage scale established during the recruitment of the most recent recruitment of the general manager. So that's an update that CalPERS has requested as we submit these for approval. And this is just one point of clarification. This is a ratification for the first 3 salary schedule revisions and an approval for the final one. The final one, effective July 3rd of 2021, has not been reviewed by the board, and that the main revision there is the general manager wage scale. And that's for the board's consideration this evening.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to open it up to my fellow board members. Yes, okay, wait, I've got 2 hands going. Council Gross, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide just a slight bit more detail. Brian has indicated that staff has been working very closely with CalPERS, and I want to make it clear that that each of these recommended actions are specifically what CalPERS has recommended and asked the district to do to make sure that the form of what we've done and the process that we've used complies with the process that they want to see. And so when CalPERS has asked the district to consider going back and ratifying action that was previously taken, that's what the recommendation is, to ratify those wage schedules that were approved on those various dates, not to make changes to them now and approve them, but to actually ratify, in other words, approve, confirm the action that the board had taken before in approving those. So that's why, these items that Director Harris has pointed out, while maybe some things have changed, like the title of a certain position may have changed, at the time the wage scale was adopted, that was the current wage scale, and we're ratifying that. So again, my point is that each of these recommendations is a recommendation that CalPERS has requested the board to make, just to clarify the process and clean up the record.
Thank you, Council Gross. Yes, Director Harris.
So
Steve,
am I?
That's
I'm
what
sorry.
this memo says we've done. We've ratified the changes, right? And all they're asking for is, all we need to do is have the board ratify it.
That is correct, Director Aguero, with my understanding. But I want to give Director Harris a moment. She raised her hand.
So I guess I have a couple questions. One is, Brian, you referred to some salaries that were discussed and negotiated with the process with the board. Were those the processes that were conducted in open session?
No, negotiations do not occur in open session. Those are in closed session with the board of directors and either a staff representative or the general manager.
Okay, so they're negotiating salaries other than the general manager in closed session.
So the term
Correct.
negotiation is an informal process for the unrepresented staff. That's not a collective, it's not a collective body. It's not a collective negotiating body. The district has taken in the past the process or the approach of the general manager having discussions with the board in closed session on what is within their acceptable range in terms of salary and wage adjustments in 2019 and 2020, or late 2019, 2020. The then general manager, Michael Hawley, had recommended to the staff that they select 2 unrepresented employees to speak on their behalf with the board and set some parameters. And so while it wasn't a negotiating body and it's not an MOU process, staff and the board had an opportunity to set parameters and come to agreement informally, with ultimately the board approving a wage and compensation package through presentation by the general manager.
Okay, so let me kind of talk back what this is. So you met with the unwrapped employees to go through the compensation and class and benefits of it. From those discussions with the group that are on the unrepresented lists, there are, it sounds like there were additional negotiations to specific positions that were not specific to the general manager, but there were a couple of adjustments made based on these conversations with the unrepped group.
So I think we're confusing something here, and from a logistics perspective, there is no negotiating body with the unrepresented group. And district code requires that the general manager establish a salary schedule and manage that. That it gets presented to the board for approval and adoption.
Okay.
The general manager or the board together can set salaries based on the board's policy. There aren't collective negotiations of any position. There are general parameters that were agreed upon between staff and the board to move forward, but that's not, the negotiation process is an informal process with unrepresented group. There's still latitude to establish wage ranges for individual positions based on the need of the district or the standards set before them.
Okay, and when you talk about general parameters, are those something that can be shared publicly, or is that something that cannot be? Okay. And then the last question I have is, you mentioned that the wage scales that were presented in this board package, all the portion that you're amending are the general manager kind of wages, whatever's in the contract or whatever the board has approved as part of the wage range for the recruiting. What my question is that the rest of it appears to be different than what was presented in July, which I'm hearing from you that could be correct because you're ratifying it. You're basically putting in this is kind of starting from scratch to approve the salary schedules as this is the actual document now.
So working with CalPERS, in order to come to resolution with the issue where there was an administrative error in March of 2018, where staff neglected to include an attachment of the salary schedules for both IBEW 1245 MOU and the unrepresented group. The board of directors, through in public session, approved and adopted both the unrepresented and represented salary schedules and the MOU. CalPERS is now requesting that the district, in a publicly agendized board meeting, ratify those decisions, making it recognized for compensation and classification for CalPERS to qualify those for PERSable salaries. Staff hasn't changed the salaries of the positions other than those that were approved by the board. There have been some edits made to those salary schedules based on CalPERS request. For example, adoption and effective dates. They have recommended that in the future, we not include blank wage schedules without positions in them, but they understand that that is at the discretion of the district. And in the future, include a wage range for the general manager. So we haven't changed the salary schedules. The document may appear different based on CalPERS request moving forward. And so this evening's item before the board is to ratify the decisions made or the approvals made on March 18th of 2020. The adjustments that were made to accommodate the end of Mr. Hawley's general manager tenure with the district and the onboarding of General Manager Rem Scherzinger. And then in 2021, there were wage adjustments based on the MOU agreement and the unrepresented agreement based on CPI index. So there was a new wage schedule for 2021. And then most recently presented before the board this evening for effective date July 3rd, the new general manager wage schedule. All of those need to be ratified with the exception of this most recent one that needs to be approved. This is per request of CalPERS.
And then as far as the general manager's salary was, we already voted on that. And when we voted on your coming on as the general manager.
The board agreed to an employment agreement with myself as the new general manager.
Right.
What's before you this evening is a wage range, a salary range that was established for recruitment purposes, but I don't believe was formally adopted for the wage schedule. So this evening would be an approval action for the board to formally adopt a general manager salary range so that we could post that publicly in compliance with CalPERS benefits requirements.
Okay.
Okay. Do all of my, yes, Kim.
I understand that. I guess that there are other changes that were made to the wage scales that are just not clear. They just, unless you know really what you're looking for, you know, like with the chief financial officer missing, I believe that that we had that position filled, but there won't be a wage scale that will reflect that that position is on the wage scale when he was hired. It's just little things like that. So the other thing is just making sure, it sounds like you're working with CalPERS, which is a wonderful thing to ensure that these kind of changes and issues don't creep up for the future.
And for the record, our chief financial officer was hired as chief financial officer and administrative services director in 2021. Staff dropped the administrative service director title. And so there is an administrative services director title for the 2020 salary schedule. And now there is a chief financial officer. Those titles were changed. And we discussed those with the board and staff and the previous general manager for the purposes of recruitment. And that was a recommendation from Peckham and McKinney during that recruitment process that it more accurately reflected the skill set and profile of that recruitment process.
It would have been nice to have like a list of all the changes that happened, because I believe that there's wage ranges that did change. I don't know if there was, I think there should be a compensation study. There was one done in 2017, 2018, and I believe that you guys have gone out to bid for a new one. So
yes, there is
in the fall.
Staff will have a presentation and action item for the board's consideration here very soon. Our public request for proposals, I believe, closed this afternoon, and staff will evaluate those for presentation and recommendation for the most beneficial proposal. Some of those positions, as Director Harris pointed out, did change in classification. That was done on the basis of expansion of roles and responsibilities. One of those, the water utility director position, didn't previously exist under Michael Hawley's tenure. He shared some of those responsibilities, and prior to his departure, part of his transition and exit agreement were to reestablish that position. And so it will be definitely, I think, beneficial to the district as a whole once we have this wage and compensation study done, and we can present that to the board and make appropriate action from there.
So I just want to, there's been a lot of discussion here. What we're doing tonight is ratifying the decision that the wage schedule from a little bit over a year ago. And this document is reflective of conditions in that moment. That's what we're ratifying. Is that correct?
Yes, that decision on March 18th of 2020 and per CalPERS request to include the general manager salaries and now the wage range. So that's what we're ratifying and are presenting for the board's consideration.
I understand that clearly. So changes that have occurred between that moment and this moment are not reflected in these documents, except for that we're including the wage range for the GM. That is my understanding. Kim is shaking her head. That is not her.
The documents changed. Everything that I read are the changes that have happened to the documents.
So, President Finn, if I can provide some extra clarification here, that subsequent to the March 18th approval, we had the final retirement and transition of former General Manager Michael Hawley. Prior to that transition, the board established a water utility director salary range that didn't exist prior to that. The board also, through formal action, approved the appointment of Joe Horvath, the electric utility director, and myself as water utility director at that time as AGM, which was reflected and updated in the salary range in the form of a stipend. We, in mid-2020, added the general manager salary schedule or salary. In 2021, we cleaned up the salary schedule to more accurately reflect the desires and requests of CalPERS. And then now this mid-cycle, we're adding the general manager salary schedule for formal adoption. The changes that occurred in the salary schedule in terms of positions being reclassified were reviewed and discussed during the informal negotiations with the unrepresented staff in the spring of 2020.
So yeah, I think we're all saying the same thing. Like we're ratifying something that happened a moment in time. Since that moment in time, other things have happened that have, occurred, but that's not what we're doing tonight. We're ratifying that one decision that we made, and we are approving the addition of a general manager wage scale. That's something that we're doing for the first time tonight. We haven't done that before. It's at CalPERS request. And again, the other thing at CalPERS request is to ratify the approval of the wage scale that we did over a year ago. That's not saying that things haven't happened in that time, that adjustments haven't been made for names of positions, et cetera, but that's not what does that make sense? Does anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question for Brian. So the first salary schedule, which says it's approved 3/18/2020 and effective 1/1/2020. And what I believe this was posted to the website shortly thereafter the approval. My question is, based on what was posted to the website for, based on the approval on 3/18/2020, what changes have been made to the document as compared to what was posted in 2020, on the website to reflect this moment in time of salary schedule or salary ranges? What's the difference between what was posted on the website and what we're looking at tonight?
What we're looking at tonight, the salaries are the same. What we have added are some of the edits that CalPERS has requested. For example, including the general manager as a wage schedule. I believe the original didn't include dates. And there are the one that's being presented this evening, I believe, have additional blank spaces. They're basically ranges that aren't occupied. I'd have to double check that, but this is the the format that CalPERS has requested that we present to the board for approval this evening so that they can recognize the salary ranges for PERSable benefits.
And also, I want to remind the board again that we do have a salary study. This is something that we discussed at that time because we noted there was compaction in our salaries and we wanted to get a more accurate, recent assessment of that. And that is due to come before us in the fall, where we will have once again a chance to revisit the wage schedules.
That's fine. I understand that. I'm just, my point is that in the beginning, I mean, Steve reminded us that we're ratifying, not changing. And while there are changes that PERS requested, such as adding the GM and things like that, that those changes, number one, that Steve, you believe those changes aren't substantive enough to require us to approve these versus ratify these, number one. Number two, that there have been no substantive changes to the existing positions other than the GM at the request of CalPERS, that there were no changes to this substantive changes to the existing positions and salary ranges than what was presented and posted to the website in, first quarter of 2020, roughly.
So to answer your question, Director Liliotis, I don't think these changes are substantive that way. The CalPERS is most interested in the wage schedules themselves. And if we want, as a belt and suspenders, we can both ratify and approve the 2020, 2021 unrepped wage schedules as approved on March 18, 2020, as amended on July 15, 2020, and as approved on February 3, 2021, and then approve the 2021 unrepped wage schedule revision to include the general manager. So if you feel more comfortable, I think it would be fine to ratify and approve if you're concerned about these non-substantive type of edits that CalPERS has requested.
No, I understand that. I guess one of the things I'm trying to get at is Kim, you seem to be alluding to that there are changes that were made to this document that are substantive that the board was perhaps not aware of and perhaps is not presented to the public as what was posted on the website. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not clear to me that this was presented. This was the base document that was presented earlier. It's just, the main reason is one, because the CFO position is in one of them, but it's just what I said.
I believe Brian very clearly addressed the CFO issue, and I'm fine with that, as that was a newly created position, and it should not have showed up in the 1/1/2020 wage schedule. So my question is, you seem to be questioning other potential changes to the 1/1/2020 document that perhaps weren't reflected in what was posted on the website. And I've asked General Manager Wright or Interim General Manager Wright or General Manager Wright, whatever his title is as of today, to better understand that question, which I hope will also maybe answer your question, because we don't have what was on the website in 2020. And I think what's being presented is as close to that as possible. And the only difference is being what CalPERS has requested us to fix, per se, for their comfort level.
I haven't seen the letter from CalPERS, so I don't know specifically what they're asking for. But when there are two ranges identified for one position, that's off of one of them. The CFO, I believe it was in the July 15th, 2020 wage scale from before, and it's not in this one. And I mean, he addressed all the other ones. So
So Brian, it's your understanding that the wage scale as presented, other than the changes you addressed per CalPERS, was the same wage scale that was posted to the website subsequent to our approval of 3/18/2020?
The wages for each of the positions are the same. The format might be slightly changed because of adding the general manager and some of the requests that the CalPERS has asked the district to include.
Thank you. So with that in mind, I'm comfortable ratifying these documents, as there have not been any changes made to things other than what was requested by CalPERS.
I'll second that motion. That's the way Steve said. And the way Brian described it.
I'm not sure that was a motion by Director Laliotis, but I am very
motion
at this time.
Tony, didn't you say motion?
I didn't make a motion yet.
But I think that we've had a lot of discussion. I think I am willing to entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
I'll make the motion, if Tony did make it, that we ratify this schedules as per what Brian said and Steve said.
Thank you, Director Aguera. Do I have a second? Yes, yes, Council Gross.
So as I heard Director Aguera, it sounded like that was perhaps a motion for the first half of the recommendation, but did not include approving the 2021 general manager salary range. So
I'd like to include that too, if that ends the motion.
So you could move approval of the staff recommendation. Yes. That would cover everything.
Okay. And that includes the general manager's wage scale.
Yes.
Okay. Range.
So I believe Director Aguera just moved as per staff recommendation. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. Shauna, could we get a roll call vote, please? You're on mute.
We all do it. Director Aguera?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
No.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving onward to the next item on the agenda, which is still, I'm sorry, I'm on my, there we go. We're still on the consent calendar. Consideration to establish the standing committees. Establish 2 standing committees, one for the Community Broadband Initiative and the 100% Clean Renewable Energy Initiative. I just wanted to say, in light of all the comments today we got about microgrids, that we might want to also elevate the local generation community initiative as well, understanding that staff may be pressed. We may not have the resources to actually do that, but if we could, I would not mind seeing that happen. So I guess I would be amending that to establishing 3 standing committees. Any thoughts from my other board members on that? And of course, staff. Brian, I know that. Okay.
Well, if there's an opportunity, President Finn, I would like to just add one consideration for the board. We have before you consideration for approving 2 of the standing committees, Broadband Initiative and 100% Clean Renewable. Staff would ask that if there's a third committee, standing committee established, that it be with consideration to the impact on staff and budget. We're going through the budget process currently. Part of that will include proposals for the board on what managing and facilitating these committees will take. And as we continue to navigate through the transition with the new general manager and some new positions here with the district, consideration for the additional workload on a third committee. One of the ways to potentially address that would be to have that third committee a little bit of a delayed start or less frequent meetings with longer term outlook on milestones and achievements. There is, per staff recommendation, the broadband and 100% clean renewable have a lot of immediacy to them from the feedback from the community and the discussions with this board. Perhaps the third committee have a longer view to it.
I am very willing to go with that recommendation from staff as a sort of a compromise, just to get the ball rolling on this, but not on the front burner, but understanding that it's become more urgent. So yes, I don't want, again, I know that we can't expect the staff to do everything at one time. So I think, Brian, what you just outlined is very acceptable to me if it is to the rest of the board. Yes.
If I could just add, as Brian stated, the agenda is very specific in considering and establishing 2 committees. And so if the board does want to consider further, take action on establishing a third committee, then I'd recommend that come back as an agendized item.
Okay, good enough. In which case, I'm going to entertain a motion to consider to establish the standing committees as it stands, as per staff recommendation of these 2 committees at this moment.
Well, there's 2 projects, so there should be 2 committees.
Yeah.
What would the third one come in for?
Later.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
And I'll second.
Can I get a roll call vote, please, Shauna?
Thank you. Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes. Okay, wow, we wrapped up the consent calendar.
Do you want to give, I'm sorry, do you want to give direction to staff then to bring an item back on a future agenda?
I think I thought that I did. So, but yes, let me be more clear. I would like staff to bring that back. Again, I do understand that it's a big ask, but as General Manager Wright sort of outlined a sort of a different time frame and timeline for it, I'm very, very willing to work with that.
And during the director comment portion of the meeting, there was some discussion about the microgrids in particular. Are you thinking about having an item that would combine, an agenda item that would combine those 2 items, or would they be separate, or could they be separate but related?
I think that microgrids are part of the local generation discussion. That's what that falls under in my estimation. So that's, I even think you could smush that together with renewable, 100% renewable goals. Like those are all very closely related.
I'm thinking about what the board's preferences are, but also about the agenda description that would signal to the community, let the community know that item that would talk about local generation would be including a discussion of microgrids.
Yeah, I believe I would be happy to work with staff on crafting that recommendation.
Thank you.
And then can we also get Steve Poncelet to do his PSOM wildfire outage presentation too, the same one that he did at the town council?
Staff can put together a presentation. The town council one was to answer specific questions presented by town manager Jen Calloway and Bob Womack, we can definitely include that information in a presentation. If we're going to present to the board an item on PSOM, I'd like to have it a little bit more holistic in terms of the PUD's role and some of the considerations for our board.
And I will be happy to continue that conversation also, Brian, and figure out when we can fit in such a presentation. Okay.
So no presentation on the PSOM outages.
Yeah.
No, not say that. Well, I think you said sort of an expanded presentation, I believe is what I heard, that one more suitable to our situation and the PUD's role.
I would rather get the presentation sooner rather than later. So when I see them at other community events or council meetings that.
Absolutely. I didn't have a timeline for it to happen. I just said that I would work with Brian to get that on the agenda as soon as, as we can. We're going to squeeze it in. We understand that there's urgency because the PSOMs are going to happen this summer, and the more information that we have as board members, the better off we're going to be. So
thank you.
Okay, we did wrap up the consent calendar. Action item number 15, consideration to approve a contract amendment for phase 2 design services with Jennifer Stoll Architect for the building modernization project. So, Jennifer, you've been very patient this evening, but I believe it is time for us to turn it over to you for your presentation tonight.
President, we're going to
start us off.
Yeah, start with Keith Renshaw, our electric operations manager and facilities manager.
I apologize. Sorry, Keith. Please.
Not a problem at all. Good evening, President Finn, members of the board. Jennifer Stoll's with us tonight to help present action item 15. Let me share my screen real quickly. Phase 2 design services for the district's building modernization project. And there we go. The district office building was built in the late 1980s with staff beginning to occupy the building in 1987. In 2010, staff worked with a consultant to produce the Innovity Efficiency Report, which identified several projects to improve the district office building. The office building projects are intended to update facilities while increasing asset longevity and efficiency. Over the past several years, the board has approved a few projects, including an IT and accounting area remodel and data center addition. In 2017, a remodel of the lobby and customer service areas, which also included bathroom remodels. In 2018 and 19, an upstairs office, kitchen, and bathroom remodel project. In 2020, an elevator rehabilitation project, as well as window replacement projects and a solar awning project. Staff has identified the possibility of combining the window replacement and solar awning projects along with modernizing the building's outdated appearance. Doing so would help maximize efficiency of all those projects with one contract. It also helps address additional stucco and painting work that would be associated with doing the window and solar awning projects alone. It would also help to enhance and modernize the appearance of the building's exterior along Donner Pass Road. And combining these projects would likely help result in a more cost-effective and competitive bidding process for construction. On March 4th, 2020, the board approved a contract with Jennifer Stoll Architect for conceptual design of 3 options for the building modernization project. Earlier this year in January, I presented a workshop for board input on 3 preliminary designs. The 3 options, option A, B, and C. Option A included completing only the window solar awning project, including stucco repair and paint. Option B included option A with complete stucco replacement on the building. And option C included both options A and B with an added public entrance, so some architectural changes and some other options that were up for board consideration, including a gym expansion and a rear awning on the west side of the building. The board's recommendations from the workshop earlier this year in January, including proceeding with option C, but without the indoor gym option. The board also asked for Jennifer Stoll to provide additional metal or composite siding options for board review. The board also asked that staff include foam board insulation into the design and to also remove or replace the arched east and west facing buildings on the tall, long hallway that goes from the east to the west side of the building. In May of 2020, Jennifer Stoll fulfilled her contractual obligations to the district by providing us with preliminary design drawings. Those included 3 siding options for the board review. And right now I'm gonna go ahead and share a different screen so Jennifer can go through those options with you.
Good evening, board. Thank you for having me. It's so interesting to be at this meeting and I appreciate it. All the hard work you guys put in. So really we're only talking about siding, the last and the final layer, but the most aesthetic and what you see. I've given you 3 different options, which I think you guys have already seen. So while it's being put up, I can talk about it. The first option that I gave you was basically what I had given you in January, is all stucco. And the reason that I still keep that on the burner is because stucco gets a sort of a bad rap. There's a reason why it's used everywhere. It's incredibly cost effective, especially in places where there are lots of corners, soffits, window penetrations, all kinds of things going on, which you have on this building. So I believe that it would end up being a cost savings to do, a stucco building, and it would look gorgeous just in that it's new, right? You have a lot of problems with your stucco. So putting on a completely new stucco over your 1.5-inch insulation would look gorgeous and also be cost effective. And the option 2 that I gave you was incorporating the requested metal siding. There's lots of different metal sidings out there. Most of them were used as roofing materials. And now we're seeing them on the sides of buildings, and it's a really fun application for the metal. It's just not suited for a building that has lots of penetrations and corners, soffits, all of the things that we have, the colonnade in the front along Donner Pass Road. What it's really well suited for is warehouse buildings, the climbing gym, things that don't have lots of, because every time you have to come to an edge, you have to cut it, waterproof it, trim it, which, you have to do some of that with stucco, but it ends up being a lot cheaper to do. And so the labor ends up being a little higher for metal siding, especially for a complicated building like this. But what we could do is have the metal be on the 2-story building, forming a block for that, giving you the metal look that you want, because that is the least intricate part of this building. That being said, that duly note that the warehouse is not on my scope, because of course the warehouse would be the best building for that material. And then of course the third option would be to acknowledge, hey, okay, this metal may be higher in labor, slightly higher in the cost of construction, but let's do a nice horizontal metal siding to the front 1-story section that fronts along Donner Pass Road. And I would also match that color with the back of the warehouse so that you can have some color resonance with the warehouse, even though that, like I said, that's not on our scope, but that cream color can match that front. So that was really the request as far as looking at 3 more renderings of what we want to do siding wise. There's lots and lots of metal siding options out there, but a pre-finished Kynar metal is going to give you the modern look that I think you guys want, without all of the costs and like, for example, any of the rusted metals. You're looking at high expense in maintenance costs, and when people use those items, they use them in very small areas because of the maintenance costs and because of the cuts and the waterproofing the edges and the labor that I've already talked about. So that's what I wanted to present to you as for the siding options.
Thank you, Jennifer. Can everybody hear me? I had some issues sharing those renderings with the group. Was everybody able to see those?
We can see them now.
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Apologies for that. Would you like me to spend some time so you can look at them a little bit longer, or I can proceed?
I mean, just real quick, just looking over all three of them, you know, I think I'm with Jennifer on option one. Just when you moved through it and Jennifer was talking about it.
Okay, I got you. Apologies for that. So
No worries.
option two still included some stucco. You should be able to see that drawing up there with some vertical metal siding. And then in option three, the color of the first floor is the same. However, both the vertical and the first and second floor stories both have metal siding on them.
And you know, one more thing to note, the additional costs. So I gave a budget, you know, I put a budget out there with all kinds of caveats, but it's to note that it's not going to be that much more expensive. It's just something to note that it will be a little bit more expensive, but it gets you a modern look quickly. And you are reciting this building. So this is something that you do want to decide on, because you don't do this, you do this every 40 years. I mean, hopefully you do it every 40, 50 years.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So that kind of segues right into the preliminary construction costs estimate for the building and modernization project. It's about 2.43 million. That cost is based on mid-2020 industry standards. However, through 2020 and 2021, we've all seen the rising costs for material and also labor shortages. The final construction estimate for the project may change due to scheduling and timing, and construction costs could also increase if additional structural work is revealed during demolition. Jennifer Stoll, architect, has also provided staff with a proposal to provide phase 2 design services in the amount of $87,000, which includes all necessary documentation required to go to bid for construction. That construction documentation includes all construction drawings, structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering. As far as fiscal impact goes, for 2021, the electric utility is forecasted to be on budget or favorable. Based on $1.6 million in additional funds available in the operating general fund as of December 31st, 2020. And if the board chooses to proceed with amending the special services contract for phase 2 design services, additional funds are available in the electric operating general fund. One more table I wanted to show. This building modernization project, as mentioned earlier, has various elements that have already been budgeted for fiscal year 2020 and 21. Those projects include the window replacement project, which was actually part of an upstairs remodel project. In fiscal year 2020-21, there was a total of $1.1 million that was budgeted for that. To date, $734,000 remain. The solar awning project was budgeted for $150,000 in fiscal year 21. That project was not completed yet. And there's also an electric operations building that was budgeted for 2020 and 21 that also has not been completed. So right now, as far as projects that were planned, there are available about $2.2 million. The building modernization project expenditures and funding source will be included in the electric utilities 10-year capital improvement plan, the 2022-2023 budget, and the associated 10-year financial master plan. So staff's recommendation tonight is to authorize the general manager to execute an amendment to the existing special services contract with Jennifer Stoll Architect for Phase 2 design services in the amount of $87,000 plus a 10% change order allowance for a total not to exceed contract amount of $127,600. Staff's second recommendation is asking the board to provide feedback on their preferred siting option for the building modernization project. And I'd also be happy to answer any other questions that may be lingering at this point.
Thank you very much, Keith and Jennifer, for your presentation. I would like to ask if there's any public comment on this action item.
No, Madam President, there's not.
Thank you, Shauna. And in which case, I'm going to open it up for director discussion. Would anybody like to get the ball rolling? Vice President Laliotis.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Jennifer and Keith. Always fun to see what things can look like. I guess one question I have is, sounds like we're not touching the roof, which I know we did a lot of work on, I don't know, about 10 years ago, maybe. And so my question is there any other director concern, or can I get maybe, Jennifer, your feedback on the roof color as compared to the overall theme that you've created?
I'd love to change the roof color.
This, you didn't highlight it very much, but,
Yeah, no, I was told that we need to be, I'm just being prudent, and I can work with anything. Color is a beautiful thing. We can work with it. Of course, I'd love to change that. It looks faded green, but you just did it 10 years ago. So I was, and it's a cost. So you tell, I'd love to, but I think that's not on the, at least the direction I was told.
No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate staff's, trying to preserve that investment as much as possible. I guess it begs the question, recoding the roof to a color that we would prefer, what is that added expense?
You mean like painting it?
Yes.
I wouldn't recommend doing that. And there's really no way that that's going to get you a warranty for your roofing. It's not a it's just not a good recommendation. It'll get destroyed. So I would recommend completely just getting new roofing on there.
Okay. Which conceivably could be at a later phase when the roof reaches its useful life, and then we can dial it in. But I do want to make sure that the contrast isn't so great that we regret investing all of this money in what I think is a great revamp of the architecture and the colors and the use of different textures and things like that, and be kind of spoiled by the roof. So, any other directors?
Jennifer, this $87,000, that's just for the front of the building, upstairs and downstairs? Windows and stucco?
So,
I can answer that question, Jennifer.
Okay.
Director Aguirre, the $87,000 is to extend the existing contract we have with Ms. Stoll to provide construction documentation to go out to bid for construction for this project. At this point, she was only contracted to complete a preliminary design for board review.
what's that 87,000 for? I didn't get it.
It's
my
for
hearing is
construction
not good.
drawings. It's a fee for the construction drawings of the scope of work, which is the demoing the stucco, adding new siding, regardless of what you guys choose, the awning construction, the window replacement, the streetscape bench, the new monument sign, the demo and rebuild the new entry, new lighting sconces, new window trim and siding, the new roof over the employee entry. It's not a gym, but it's still a covered patio. And subgrade waterproofing and adding the 1.5-inch rigid insulation. That's just the scope, the general scope of all the architecture for the construction drawings.
Okay, that's just the front of the building.
That's correct, Director Aguirre.
Pardon?
Not the warehouse.
Yes.
No, right, just the front of the building, just the windows and the awnings and whatever we have to add to it.
That is correct, Director.
And why the upright siding? For trim or aesthetics or what? Why not just the stucco?
Director Aguirre, and that's what we're wanting the board's feedback for tonight is.
Oh, okay. That tell me later. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the scope of the project was pretty much decided on the January workshop, and the only real decision now is just the siding. Only because you don't want to pay me to go through detailing stucco and then decide that you want it to go to metal.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
There you go. Hi,
Thank you.
Keith and Jennifer. Thank you guys so much for this presentation. Just one of the questions I had is that I know that you wanted the total not to exceed a contract amount of $127,600. The 87 plus 10% comes out to $95,700. Is there a remaining $31,000 in there that's left over from before, or do we need to up the 87 so it meets the threshold of plus 10% to be 127?
Director Harris, the original contract for preliminary design, we want to amend that with the additional 87,000 plus 10% of 87,000 for a total of 126,700.
Okay.
To include the phase 2 design service.
Okay, I just was wondering what that difference was. So thank you. A nice job. It's always good to see a facelift for that giant white building there.
Do we have any other directors like to pipe up? We do have to make a decision about option 1, 2, or 3. So everybody's going to have to.
Right. Yeah, I guess option 3 is kind of not really on my list. So, I'm liking 1 and 2. Jennifer, I'm assuming option 1 is your number 1 recommendation. Oh, you're muted.
I'm coming around. It is there's so many things I could talk about with modern design, modern mountain architecture, flat roofs, metal siding, all of this. I'm not sure if it's 100% timeless. And so that's not why I'm thinking that, all these new metal buildings we have will be marked in 2020, this era. But doing that second story building in the middle would really make a lot of sense. And you would still get that touch of modernity and but do stucco for the front. I think it's prudent to do stucco. I think you guys are a public entity and you don't want to do, rusted copper because you can't afford it. Nobody wants to do that. But so I think I was really gunning towards option 1, but now I'm in love with both of them. Sorry.
And then, so I guess then thinking about the future potentially with the warehouse in the back, how does option 2 fit with, I guess, it'll be stucco for a while. And then you mentioned earlier, the warehouse is a great application for, just a big metal building. Just kind of thinking out loud there on that one.
Well, I'm not sure when that is even going to come down in your agenda, but at that time, we can make the best possible choice given what it looks like, given the choices we make now. And you can pick a metal that, matches the new metal, double-sided, or you can have it be something completely different because it is something completely different, right? So I think that we can work with whatever we choose in the future.
Okay. And then lastly, the existing green roof. I guess one option is to have an add option, right? Put it in the plans for a new color roof to replace it and have the contractors bid on that. Then we could see numbers. Just thinking out loud on the roof, considering your recommendation on changing the roof. So that's one option, to have, an add option for us. Hey, let's just look at what that number is, and then we can make a decision, kind of punting it down the road a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
The roof, I'm more than excited to change the roof, Director Bender. I would be happy to do that. But understanding how you guys function and the compartmentalization of how you guys work, I think blowing the roof off in 5 years is not going to be a problem. And also, when you look at my color boards, I tried really hard to incorporate that green. And you can do that with some earthy tones, right? I mean, it's not really the earthiest green, but it won't look horrible. But yeah, I think that we could look at doing that. That would definitely change the scope of my work because, you've got the wall to the roof connection, right? Which changes everything as far as that goes. So I think it would just be a little bit more of a complex thing. And I think maybe when we go for bidding, we could talk to the general contractors about that cost and come back to inform you on what we're looking at.
Okay.
Can't you just see the roof from an airplane? Where else do you see the roof from?
Well, when I was doing the photo documentation of the building, I actually did have a hard time getting a decent shot of that, Director Aguela. I was like, where do I get that green? Because you do see it, but it's not prominent.
No, right. You do see it, but you look at the building. I've looked at that building 100 times. And, the lower floor, is that the roof you're talking about? In front of the building, does it lean forward? I can't remember.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Oh, so that's what the roof color is. Tony, that's the roof color you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the most prominent place that you see
it.
it.
In the main building, I mean on top.
That's a flat roof, actually. I think you have a triple ply up there.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I like it the way it is because the rest of the trim is green and it kind of seems to go with everything.
Additionally, to note, you guys, the new roof, the new modern entry roof, is faced away, so you wouldn't see that.
Yeah.
In very many places.
I'm with you. I'm the roof. Let's just get the cost and see what the difference would be, and we can decide then about color and stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm with Jennifer and Director Aguera with just hunting on the roof, as I'm short and I don't look up. I'm just going to say option number one. Jennifer, I think you made a compelling argument for me about the cost efficiency of stucco, and I liked the way it looked. And if it's easier to work with, that's where I fall down on the choices of A, B, and C. That's it. I'm easy.
No, I think option one, I think it's, I think it's enough of a statement. Adding the siding would be cool, but I just, I think what Jennifer's presented in option one is very, very aesthetically pleasing, incorporates a lot of modern architecture, but also incorporates sort of the keep it simple approach, which I think is prudent from a public agency perspective. As she's done, we can do a lot with colors. And so I think a good portion of this project is the architecture for me that, really makes the building pop more so than the colors themselves. So I'm good with moving forward with option one.
Okay, I saw a thumbs up from Director Harris. Director Bender, do you have a?
Yeah, I'm still on option one for me.
Okay.
Option one was the stucco, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm with Tony with what he said, the kind of simplicity, but it's still nice. Now that you showed us a picture of the building, was that your new concept of what it would look like? Or is that the way it is now?
No, that's with the scope of taking off the exterior covered entry that you have. That's kind of like a four-way pitched roof entry, taking that off and putting a more modern, inviting entry on.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to get into that more often and see more pictures.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back in person soon, and we can remind ourselves what the PUD looks like. So I think that we have some consensus here as far as direction for Jennifer and for Keith, that we are in agreement about proceeding with option one. And we haven't, I'm just going to assume that we would authorize the general manager to sign the amendment to the existing services contract to continue with the process. Would anybody like to does anybody have anything else they want to say?
Actually, I apologize. I have one more question. So looking at the street, sorry, I'm on my computer, but looking on the street side of, the view, there are two distinct, roof panels that go from the second story, about midway from the second story level, down to the first story. The first one, which is closest to the entrance, has has a hip and maybe a couple, 3 pitches. Is that whole section coming down, Jennifer?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and then there's a second roof, distinct roof section you can see from the street that's on the opposite side of the building next to the garden. That's a very, very large green area. Was that proposed to be untouched?
Correct. This is not yet correct. Exactly. There's those 2 panels that would be, there's 2 roofs that, like you described, go down from the upper level down to the lower level. And then in between there is actually a flat roof, like with the 3-ply roof. Those 2 of those panels will be kept And it's really just the outer square cupola entry with the 4 different roofs.
Okay.
That is completely exterior, but probably has plumbing for, sprinklers and all that in it. But taking that off and putting a modern entry roof. So there's no new conditioned space, especially since we took off the gym in the back. It's really exterior to new exterior.
Okay. So your envision of replacing the roof, as we've just discussed, was just those 2 particular areas, or was that the whole building?
Oh, if you want, when you get the funding or when you decide to, I'd take all the green and do some other color.
Okay.
But this new roof, this new metal roof is all that I'm proposing.
Okay. I was just curious from the perspective of what people see immediately and from Donner Pass Road are those two roof structures. And if it didn't kind of mess up the continuity of the building, if those 2 sections were just replaced to better color coordinate with the entire remodel versus the entire rest of the building, I didn't know if that made sense at all. It's not, those aren't huge areas, they're added costs, but they're the things that people will see immediately from Donner Pass Road and pedestrians walking on the other side of the road on the sidewalk. So I don't know if there's any board thought on that.
The other comment, and I can respond to that. The other comment would be the west end stairway and the new covered porch that we're doing for the employee area. That roofing will end up matching the green, right? Because it would look really odd to have that be something else. So it is duly noted. And I think that when you're driving, the farther away you get from the building, the more you see the green roofing. Like I said, I would love to have that be in the scope. It just changes the direction. And yeah. I could do a little darker green roof, that matches the tone of the green that you have so that it looks like it resonates, but not that particular brighter green.
Right. Well, I'm 1 board member and 5, so.
Yes. Budgets and everything else. What is the lifespan of our roof? When do we expect to have to replace it naturally? Does anybody know?
Keith could probably answer that, but I'd say that those metal roofs last 30, 40 years. I mean, they're supposed to last that long.
Okay.
I'm not sure who did that project.
Yeah, it was done by Summit, I think I want to say it was 2010, maybe. Summit Roofing out of Reno. But the issue really was the previous construction methods weren't very good. So there was a lot of waterproofing issues. As I recall, a lot of leaks, just not necessarily from the metal itself, but how it was installed and how it was integrated into some of the transitions and corners and things like that. So, but that's what I recall from the project. When I first got on the board, I think is about when we did that project.
I'll bet you that Kathy News would know how many years it's guaranteed for.
No, Kathy News was the project manager, so she'd be pretty intimate with it, but she's no longer with us.
I thought she was the one that was working on that roof.
She was.
Yeah.
She was the project manager.
Right. So she would know how many years.
I believe Director Liliotis is
someplace in her old desk. It's got to be someplace in that building.
Okay, I didn't mean to open another can of worms. I'm going to move this forward.
I'm done talking.
Thank you, Vice President Laliotis. I'm going to, I believe that we have consensus, at least with our options for option one. And I am happy to entertain a motion as per staff recommendation. Where am I? Sorry. For the change order. So that's what I'm listening for.
So moved.
Thank you.
Staff's recommendation for item number 15.
Second.
Could we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you know what? It's 9 o'clock, and I'm going to suggest, first I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you.
And to Keith, thank you for your presentation. And
Thank you.
Yes. And now I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break so everybody can do whatever we need, because we've been here for 3 hours, and then we will come back. Shall we? It is, by my watch, 8:56. We'll be back at 6 after 9. Thank you. Whew. Okay, which brings us to item number 16, where we left off. Consideration to appoint President Finn to represent the TDPUD Board of Directors and the district as it relates to preliminary local agency collaboration and greenhouse gas reduction group. So there's no staff presentation on this item. It is just me. I felt that I needed to bring this up to the board at this point. This greenhouse gas collaboration group, which we're calling at the moment, it's a working title, the greenhouse gas thing, began as a conversation between myself and Mayor Klovstad. And we expanded a tiny bit, and General Manager Wright hosted a meeting with Jen Calloway, myself, Anna, and Brian to discuss local districts in the town and the PUD coming together and sort of sharing our greenhouse gas reduction goals and trying to create a structure that would make that easier to do. And we were thinking about things like the Mountain Housing Council as a blueprint to do this. So I then called David Diamond, and then of course things, as they do when David is behind them, it expanded rather quickly. And we got a lot of interest. We had a couple of meetings where we had the airport district and the hospital district and ourselves and the town of Truckee, North Lake PUD, Nevada County expressed interest in the concept. And that's kind of where we are now. And we've been talking to Sierra Business Council about sort of being a convener and a mediator. And what this group, the vision is as it stands now, is this group would meet, projects would be presented to us, agencies that were interested in any particular project could be like, we're interested, break off, discuss it, and see if we can make it happen. Again, a lot like the Mountain Housing Council, JPA. We are not even at that point yet, but I wanted to come to you and to ask for, to be a little more empowered to speak, not just for myself, but for the district. And of course, anything that comes up as far as structure or financing obviously goes, of course, we will be bringing that right back to the board, and I will be reporting to you with regularity if you in fact appoint me to represent and participate in this group that is just now forming. So if anybody has any questions, I would be really happy to answer them and talk about this more. And if not, great.
I kind of think that you'd be a good candidate for us, a good representative to go on this. And it sounds like you'd like to have the position, would you?
I would.
Yeah, okay, good. So we'll see you other discussion, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. I have a great idea, Krista, and I'm in support of appointing you. So.
Thank you,
yeah.
Director.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Your passion for this subject definitely is just, it's great. So I, like to see it, and I'm absolutely in support of it too. So,
thank
you.
Sure.
Go forth and collaborate.
Okay. Thank you. That's I really appreciate it.
Any motion on that, Tony, or not? We don't need a motion.
I think we do need a.
We should have invite public comment and then consider a motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
There's nobody here.
No, Madam President.
Thank you, Shauna. And now I will entertain a motion.
Go ahead, Tony. You make good motions.
I'll move to appoint President Finn to this collaboration of multiple agencies and entities within the town and the basin with regards to greenhouse gas reduction projects. Does the entity have a name?
Not yet. We're just calling it the greenhouse gas thing. It's a thing.
Okay, so you're appointed to the greenhouse. I make a motion that you be appointed to the greenhouse gas thing.
I second.
Good deal.
Roll call vote, please.
Director Aguirre,
Yes.
Director Bender,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis,
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. I will be reporting back to you as hopefully soon on progress. Okay, that brings us to routine business this evening. We have the treasurer's report.
I have one item for you, President Finn. We need to officially ratify the emergency procurement for the Donner Creek well.
I forgot. Well, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to ratify that as per staff's recommendation, which is really just in my head right now.
I'll second the motion.
Any public comment?
Any public comment? What a great question, Vice President Laliotis. Do we have any public comment on that, Shauna?
No, Madam President.
Thank you.
President Finn, if it pleases the board, I'd like to give a little background on what drove the action just for public consumption here and make sure we go through the process kind of formally.
It does please the board.
Okay. First I'll give a little bit of background on the event and give the kind of provisions within district code that provide for the action and what the requirements are this evening and moving forward. So on Saturday, staff became aware of the failure of Donner Creek Well. Donner Creek Well is located by the McDonald's. You may have seen a little well house over there off the side of 89, kind of by the McDonald's drive-through. That well was formerly a potable water well many years ago, but has since been dedicated as a non-potable irrigation well to Coyote Moon Golf Course. And it's a 500 gallon per minute submersible pump and well assembly that provides seasonal irrigation, obviously during the summer, for Coyote Moon. And so the first reaction would be, what is the emergency for a seasonal irrigation well? The overall impact when that goes down is that Coyote Moon has a potable water connection that serves as a backup. And that connection exists in the kind of the pumping sequence for potable water to be distributed up in the Tahoe Donner. And when we add an additional demand, such as the potable water connection to provide irrigation to that golf course, it compromises the district's ability to pump water up into the Tahoe Donner subdivision in a timely manner. Our concern here, and what made the urgency, is we're 4th of July weekend. We're in the midst of a relatively severe heat sequence here over the next couple of weeks. It kind of coupled with the fact that we are potentially going to experience some power outages due to PSOM, the topic we've all been talking about. And so in a power outage event, if the district's water storage tanks are already lower than normal due to an extra demand, it really puts a burden on the district's ability to return water up into the Tahoe Donner subdivision, or any subdivision for that matter, when there's additional demand. So the general manager, under district code section 3.08, under procurement during emergencies, has authorization under district code to make a decision that a procurement is an emergency if it has potential. I'm going to read from it. General manager is authorized to repair or replace a public facility, take any directly related and immediate action required by that emergency, and procure the necessary equipment, services, and supplies for those purposes without Title III, page 25, immediate board approval, without giving notice for bids to let contracts. So basically, if the procurement is seen as an item that's required to preserve district property or facilities in an emergency, the general manager has authority to make that procurement that would normally be under a board approval limit but there are provisions that the board within 48 hours, which we're doing this evening, come back to the board, notify the board, and then ratify the decision at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And that's this evening as well. So it just happens to be that the next regularly scheduled meeting and that 48-hour window fall this evening. And so I am recommending to this board that we consider ratifying the general manager's decision to authorize procurement for the replacement of that well motor that took place yesterday. The contractor is still working on it today and tomorrow. The board ratification would happen this evening, and then the general manager would be required to bring back the item at the next regularly scheduled meeting once the emergency has been resolved, and report back to the board to basically close that emergency event. And I can answer any questions on that, on the event itself. One of the things that may pop up in terms of board recollection, a few years ago in 2018, we had a similar procurement associated with this well due to a shaft failure and bearing failure that put the well out of service at about the same time during a heat event here in Truckee. So this particular well, because it has such a high demand on it, does create some impact on the potable water deliveries for the Tahoe Donner subdivision in that peak demand period.
Ryan, when will the project be done? In another day or so?
We expect it to be completed by end of business tomorrow.
Oh, good.
And everything back into full production.
Yes, thank you.
The normal procurement process would require the district to create bid documents, go out to bid, create a public announcement and advertisement of those bids, hold a bid opening, and then at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, present to the board for approval of awarding of those bids. That would, at a minimum, put this repair of this well likely into August, maybe late July, and staff didn't feel that was would be prudent for delivery of service during this hot
Yeah. No,
and
that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work.
So do we have to declare this an emergency as a board? Is that recommended, Steve?
Okay, so we
Tony, I don't have that. I don't have our policy or the code opened up right now. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's necessary, but it doesn't hurt. If we, again, we can declare emergency, ratify the action and have it and bring it back as required by our policy and the code, the public contracting code. So
Okay, but we're
it doesn't hurt, Tony. It doesn't hurt to declare the emergency and ratify the action.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I can make a motion that based on staff's presentation that we declare the failure of the Donner Creek well as an emergency, and we authorize the general manager to follow district code that pertains to resolution of emergencies under his power, and to bring back necessary documents and procedures to the board as necessary in future meetings.
Second that motion.
Okay, I'm assuming nobody else has any more questions for Brian. Okay, in which case, Shauna, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Bender,
Yes.
Director Harris,
Yes.
Vice President Waliotis,
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if I could just add, Tony, I just did check the code. It's not required to declare, for the board to declare an emergency, just to continue the action.
Yeah.
Very good. So we do have a theme tonight. It's better safe than sorry. very conservative in all of our processes. So thank you. On to routine business, approval of the treasurer's report, including the fund balances for month ended April 2021 and disbursements for the month ended May 31st, 2021. Do we have,
moved for both of them.
thank you, Director Aguirre. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice President Laliotis. Shauna, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Bender.
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis.
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
And item number 18, approving the minutes of the June 2nd, 2021 and the June 16th, 2021 minutes. There we go. Any minutes, comments? Oh, I'll move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
And if we could get a roll call.
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Bender.
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis.
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which brings us to our closed session items. I'm going to simply reverse the order and we'll do enter closed session to discuss item number 20, our public utility security and services. And that way Director Harris can come in with us and then we can move from there. Is that, Council Gross, I see that you're unmuted, which means you have something to say.
That would work just fine. And I was just going to just state for the record that Director Harris has a conflict with respect to item 19, and that's why she would not be participating in that item.
Very good. So let's exit open session right now, and we'll see you all in closed session at the closed session link in a minute.